Welcome. We're here. Barb and I are here with a fantastic guest. I can't tell you how excited I am to talk to this person. Hailing from Newfoundland, uh, Katie Noseworthy is here with us today to talk about her brand new book called Knits for Little Ones. It's an amazing book. Barb, you had a chance to look at this as well. What do you think? What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I think that it's darling. The designs are all so sweet, and then this whole Newfoundland culture that sort of gets integrated into each one of the designs. It makes it just a fascinating book.
Right?
Yeah.
So we've connected with Katie. She's in her home in Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, which is very close to St. John's. And
Mhm.
she's come to talk to us a little bit about the book. So maybe we'll turn the spotlight over to Katie and just maybe start with a little introduction. Katie, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, first of all, so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talking about the book. It's finally happening. It's taken so long to get here, and I'm just super pumped about it. So I live in Newfoundland. I born and raised here. Grew up just outside of St. John's. Still living just outside of St. John's in Mount Pearl. I live here with my fiance and our 3-year-old, who is featured prominently in the book. So he's like been my little model this whole time, basically. But yeah, so I mean, I've been knitting since I'm about 15, so that would be about, oh good God, 17 years ago now, 18 years ago now. But definitely been into the design side of things probably since about 2017, and that's when I started trying to put pen to paper on stuff and get my get my thoughts out into the world. And yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up where I am today, I suppose.
That's fantastic. Katie, do you have any sort of inspiration, role models, things like that that you look to?
Just for like designing, you mean?
Yeah.
So getting started, it was actually a friend of mine had started designing, and I was like, I should do that. It was like I just wanted to do it too. Like call it a copycat if you want, but I was like, I want to do that too. So like I really looked up to her and how she was writing her patterns and stuff, and she just had fabulous approach to it. She was actually my tech editor for a little bit too, which was great, and I miss her dearly because she doesn't do it anymore. So I did that, and then of course as I went on and we were looking around at just drawing inspiration from other people, it was mostly a lot of the people I like to their patterns I like to knit is what I kind of ended up gravitating towards, if that makes sense. Because of course you teach the way you were taught, you knit the way, or you write the way you learned, right? So it's um, a lot of like the Brooklyn tweed patterns, a lot of the Hoodie patterns, like those types of things, like where it's more. I like to call the term elegant. I'll say, but it's very like if someone was walking down the street in a Brooklyn tweed sweater, you'd never know that it was a hand knit sweater. It's just a beautiful garment. You know what I mean? So that's
Mhm.
kind of the way that I approach this. It's not that there's anything wrong with something looking handmade or anything, but that's the look and feel that I like to go for, is more like that elegant, up to date. Like you'd never know otherwise. Like I love when people are like, "You made that." I'm like, "Yeah, I made that." It's like, "Sure, that looks store bought." I'm like, "I know." That's like that's the best part. So it's that's kind of where I gravitate towards in terms of what I like to design and what I like to knit to.
Mhm. So let's jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about your book. We know that you were inspired by where you live, and I was wondering if you could start off with that. Tell us a little bit about the knitting traditions in Newfoundland and how that inspired you.
Yeah, so I mean, Newfoundlanders are kind of known across the country in two camps. Either we never want to leave, or we can't wait to get out. I fell into so it's one or the other, right? I tend to fall into the former. Like I actually have a very strong sense of place here. I feel like I was born in the exact right spot. I hate high temperatures. I hate really cold temperatures. I don't mind the rain, except for when it's 4 weeks in a row, which like we're done out of that, thankfully. But it's just, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like I'm fine here. I don't never had this magical urge to get out and move and live somewhere else. I was always absolutely fine to live here. So from a culture perspective, like I love the music. I love these, like being able to walk, like drive 2 minutes and get to a forest somewhere. Like it's just where I want to be. In terms of knitting traditions in Newfoundland, so of course everyone in Newfoundland grows up with knitwear and stuff like that, and you may not like analyze it as you're growing up, of course, but you always had it around you. It was always a staple in what was lying around the house. My first real, I guess, deep dive into it was when I actually started working for Nonia. Have either of you heard about Nonia before? So Nonia is actually super cool. So I hope you don't mind me chatting about them because I used to sit on their board. I used to work for them in their quality control. But basically, they were born as a way for Newfoundland, prior to joining Canada, mind you, to pay for healthcare in the outports. So they would send out yarn and patterns to women. They would pay the women for their work, and then the yarn would come, or the finished items would come into St. John's and they would be sold, and then the profits from that would go and fund nursing in Outport, Newfoundland. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Newfoundland, like it takes to get from one side to the other, not counting actually like down anywhere, it takes about 8 hours of driving. Then to fork off to go other places, like you could look at another 4 hours on top of that, right? So it's very easy to get somewhere that's quite remote. So paying for all that would, obviously would be a challenge in any environment, let alone in the 1910s. So that's how Nonia was born. They continue to operate today, but all their stuff now, of course, healthcare is paid for elsewhere, but we still try and, the whole point is to try and maintain that tradition now, right? And that's their whole, I guess, their main vision and purpose is to keep that tradition alive. So working there, I got to know a lot of the traditional patterns. So your double ball mitts, your cuffed socks, your hunter socks, your cable knit sweaters. And my job was actually evaluating those knits. So I would have to take it, make sure it looked all good. Was it worth selling? Like, are we able to sell this in the shop type of a thing? I would say 99.9% of everything that we had was sold because the women who knit were fabulous. And these are women who can pump out 3 cable knit sweaters in a month. And they just know it. They know that pattern in their brain. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. And the scary part to me is it only lives in the brain. So if Joyce out in Joe Bat's arm passes away, so does that sweater pattern. So you know what I mean? So like that's one of the dangers that we were seeing. So now by, one thing that I wanted to do with the knitting is to make sure that some of these traditions do stay alive. Now mine are more, as I said earlier, I tend to modernize mine a little bit more. But like we also saw Shirley and Christine doing the saltwater knit stuff, like a lot of what they've done, like that has really made a huge difference in how we immortalize Newfoundland knitting so that people will be able to continue to do this even when the people who made it all up are gone. So that's just a little bit about that type of thing. And as you can tell, I really feel for it, if that makes sense, but it's just something I am passionate about. I think it's worth talking about and worth recognizing and celebrating at the same time, for sure.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for letting us know, because I do recall, I think Stephanie Pearl McPhee had told us once about this organization and the work that was being done. And so thank you so much, because you can feel the passion coming through in your voice about your experience with the group.
They still operate. Like cruise ships love it when they come here because they pull right into the harbor in St. John's, which is like this little tiny harbor. You can barely fit a cruise ship through there. Like you're scraping the sides of the cliffs getting in. But it's the most protected harbor, right? But they park there, and then everyone flocks up. And these are people coming from, like, a lot of times they're doing like the northern route. So like they'll start over in Ireland, and they'll do the Nordic countries and Denmark and Iceland and move down. So they've seen a lot of knitwear along the way, and then they come here and then they see ours, and it's kind of like we couldn't keep those cable sweaters on the shelf, right? So because it was just like, oh my God, we need them more, right? And they're just beautiful sweaters. So, and of course we did other things and stuff too, but the sweaters were just spectacular. So I will commend everyone who's ever made one of those sweaters, because they are a lot of work.
Yes. Well, let's shift now. Let's start talking about your designs. And maybe you could take us a little bit through your book by showing us some of your designs. I know you've brought some special ones that you wanted to show us today.
Yeah, so of course I do have the book in front of me because I have an advanced kind of copy here. Yes, when I got this, I was like just showing it. I was just walking around like, look what I did. Because I was so excited that it was finally here. And this is my son on the front. This is Philip. So he's about 16, 17 months there, and he's 3. He'll be 3 this month.
Wow.
So
So there you can see the length of time it takes for a book to actually, get from one stage to a finished stage. Yes. And Cynthia and I are waiting, with bated breath to get our copies. We just cannot hardly wait.
Yes, I'm so excited for them to finally be here. I got multiple people messaging me today, actually being like, "Is it here yet? I don't have my copy yet. Where is it?" I'm like, "We're shipping to an island in the North Atlantic. Give it a minute." Right? Things happen, but that's kind of the other part of this is that it takes a long time for things to get here. So we're hoping that it will be here any day. By the time this comes out, hopefully it will be in everyone's hands. So that's the goal.
Yes.
But yeah, so no, so just to kind of flip through a couple of things. So we have some articles and stuff in here. We have everything, all the patterns are written with charts and written instructions for people to have options for both. Charts when required. And then, trying to break down things as easy as possible so I'm not even holding this up. So just trying to break things down as easy as possible for people to see it and understand what's going on and make sure that it's easy to knit when you're trying to do it. The other nice thing is the book actually lays flat, which is a nice little perk for a knitting book. Was there anyone in particular that you were wanting to see first? Because I have the whole bunch right here.
I was totally entranced with, and I'm probably going to say it wrong. Is it Halbvik?
I believe so, yeah. So that was, so of course, in writing the book, Newfoundland is more than just an island. It actually includes Labrador as well. But we're very different cultures, but I wanted to make sure that they were included in this too, because it's still an important part of who we are as a province. But that is the highest mountain in the province, Mount Kalvik. Let me find it here. The little pants. Love them. So I'll hold up to the camera there so you can kind of see the detail. But it's just simple color work. You're not having to carry too many at a time because you still want it to be nice and stretchy on the leg. Like you want it to be able to move with the kid. You don't want them to be stuck in it and then afraid to move. These ones in particular, I made sure. Okay, so coming back as a mom, one of the things I wanted to do with this collection was make things that could actually be worn and used by kids, because there's a lot of stuff out there that is adorable and think people love to make it, but the kids it either doesn't last or it's not wearable. So for me, I actually went to my group of mom friends. Normally with my design process, I'll be like, what do I feel like making today? And then what can I do new with it? That's kind of where I start. With this collection, I actually went to my mom friends first. I said, guys, like, what would you put on your kids? What would your kids like to be wearing? What do they like to wear? And from there, I generated that kind of like a list of ideas and went from there. But one thing that everyone said was, I want things to last. I don't want them to only wear it for a month and then grow out of it, which is especially hard when they're super little. So one thing I did with these is I made it like a grow with me style. So this has an extra long waistband, that's really dark because it's dark yarn, but it's an extra long waistband that can be folded over, but then as it goes up, you can just use it as the full waistband. And there's 2 sets of eyelet loops for doing the belt.
What a great idea.
And then the cuffs are the same way. So you can fold them when they're super little and then lengthen them out as you need to. So that was one thing that we went for right away. I was like, okay, we need to make sure that we're doing that with as much as possible. So we did that with this one, and we did that with, these are the little overalls. So I did the same thing at the ends of the overalls to give it a bit more room for them to grow into it. Sorry, it's really hard to see the dark yarn here. There we go. So if you can see the cuff is probably about that long there. Then you fold it when they're little, and when it's time to, when they're growing up and their legs are sprouting because all of a sudden they wake up and their pants don't fit anymore, you can just unroll them.
So does that take it, say, from, a newborn or, 12 months up to, say, 2 or 3 years?
So no, I wouldn't give it that wide of a range. I'd probably give it like a 6-month range. So like if you were making these pants, so these pants here, the cowbit pants, I had made these. I believe this is the pattern I made for the 18-month version, but I could probably fit him in those now, and he's 3, right? So I'd probably put it up a couple of sizes, yeah. But he would probably still fit in those, but it would be the full length of them. Whereas in the pictures, it's all folded because he was only, he was probably about 4 inches shorter at that time. So, but that was kind of one of my goals, is to make things last, because one thing that I love about knitwear and kids is that it lasts. It actually lasts longer for them if you take care of it and everything. But because of its natural stretch, and because like most often you make it a little bit bigger or whatnot, like I had Philip in a sweater I made for him in March, and he was still wearing it that Christmas. Right? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, he's still squat into it, but like, but he loved it. And he wanted to wear his sweater. So it was, that was one thing I was like, we want to make sure that we're doing this to make sure that if people are spending the time to make these things for their kids or their grandkids or whomever, that it's going to last and be able to be worn and be functional.
Did you get any other tips from the mom group, maybe about, knitwear and that would have gone into your design?
Yeah. So one was they said they like stuff that was warm, but it was car seat friendly. Because of course in car seats you can't have bulk. You can't have anything like that because it can potentially cause someone to slip out of the seat if you're in an accident. So that was partly for this one here, which is the little snowsuit, or like the bunting suit. I'll back up so people can kind of see it here. So that was kind of the inspiration behind this one, because it's a warm. This is all 100% wool. Now this is a super wash one I did for, because it's a kid. But the idea behind it is that really, like, that's warm enough for them to fit something underneath it. Like they can wear their pants and shirt underneath, throw that on over the top, and it's safe in the car seat. Same thing with this one, which is the poncho. Again, I'll back up a little bit. It's darker yarn. I apologize, folks. The sun has come around the side of my house and it's disappeared from this room. But this one here, see if I can blow it out a little bit here close. Has all the cable edging and stuff on it there, but it's a little poncho. Same thing with that. So that is car seat friendly. It's easy to access the clips and stuff like that. So it was just, they don't want to be fighting with clothes. The other thing came in some of the finishings. People hate buttons. Like parents hate buttons, like zippers all the way. But for knitwear, a lot of us don't put zippers in our knitwear. So you'll see that I often use these toggle buttons because they're a lot easier to maneuver quickly than a flat button.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise it was mostly just about, they wanted stuff that, again, it would last, it was wearable, it would match everything, because sometimes, you see kid sweaters and they're really fun, but they are good to wear with one pair of pants and that's it. So they wanted stuff that would be like, if I was going to buy they're saying if I was going to buy something knitworthy, I wanted, or knitwear for them, I would want something more plain, more solid colors, tonal colors, like those types of things instead.
Mm-hmm. And maybe a little more modern too, like you were referencing.
Yes. Now, I mean, actually, one thing I will say about people here is that they still love the really traditional stuff. What we don't love about it is sometimes it's not done in a functional yarn. So they wanted it to be warm, right? They're like, if I'm going to put this on my kid instead of a coat, I need it to be warm. So I recommend, and I usually will recommend wool, even for kids. There are lots of choices out there now. Like back in the day for us, we had our wool. The only wool that we could really access was like a Briggs and Little, which is beautiful yarn, but it's not for everyone. And a lot of kids find it hard to wear because it is more rustic. There are kids out there who love it. Great. The vast majority of kids I know would be like like trying to get it off them because it's so itchy, especially up around the neck. So I opted for things like, different merinos, but also a lot of Cascade. I find that's like Philip can wear that no problem. But they were like, I want my kid to be comfortable in it. So that was more or less where they were more concerned, I guess is the word. One of the things that they were like, please make it so, or like that's what I'd be looking for. Not that they were instructing me, I watched a design, but just like this is what I look for when I go to buy clothing.
Yeah, that's great. And, Katie, let's talk about that for just a moment. Let's talk about yarn, because we noticed that a number of your garments were made in, say, hand painted, a few designer yarns, which have a little higher price point and budget. What are your thoughts about that?
So I used a lot of what I had on hand. As you can see, I have, well, this is about half of my yarn collection. I just call it now. I don't even call it my yarn. It's the yarn collection. So I used a lot of stuff that I had on hand that way. That said, there are like any of these patterns, if you're looking to substitute yarns, it's not written for just that particular type of yarn. There are lots of options out there these days to find different like figuring weight yarns, DK weight yarns, worsted weight.
I love Lupin. It's a beautiful little dress that Katie used Julie Aslin Fino in it. And Julie Aslin's a wonderful dyer from Montreal. We love her yarns.
A bit of like lace at the bottom.
Oh, isn't that cute?
Throughout.
Look at the little pleats at the bodice.
Fuzz ball on it. Sorry. There we go. I have pets as well. I have a pet, so there's fuzzies everywhere sometimes. But yes, so I did use the Julie Aslin Fino mostly because that was the color I had in my brain for that dress. Like, so I have a very strong attachment to colors. When I picture something in a certain color, then that's it. Like the Dory sweater, the cabled one, I was like, that has to be yellow. So then I just found whatever yellow I could. In terms of substituting yarns, honestly, just find what works for you and what's going to work for the person you're knitting for. If someone that you're knitting for is someone who has no problem with hand washing and is more than happy to, just wear that for special occasion only or whatnot, they're more accustomed to working, caring for those types of yarns, by all means, go as fancy as you want to go. But there are lots of budget friendly options out there. I have a lot of budget friendly yarn in my stash. But you can make it as fancy as you want to. You can make it as inexpensive as you want to. Either is really going to work for you. The only thing I would recommend, again, is trying to find something with a little bit of wool in it because it will block better. So, and I know like you're going to be wearing it, so blocking is, sometimes people kind of argue against blocking, but I always argue for it because it does relax the yarn and the fibers and stuff. But yeah, it's something with at least a little bit of wool content there to help with that. But I think for this one too, I think if you had a nice cotton, it would work well too, especially for warmer climates. We live in the North Atlantic. We can wear wool 12 months of the year. So like that's the other thing. Everything here is made in wool. And you're like, you're making a summer dress in wool? I'm like, you got it. You know I am. But a cotton would work really well for this too, because that would also relax once you wet it and, block it properly there. So that's kind of, as I say, I wouldn't get too hung up on the types of yarns I use there. I only put them in for the sake of saying this is what I used if you're looking to replicate it, but just stick with the weight and you're good to go.
Yeah, that is good to know though. So if a little person happens to live in Florida or something, cotton would be a wonderful choice, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I like wool, as I said, because it's freezing here most times. But if you're living in a warmer climate, you probably don't want to wear a pure wool sweater all the time or like have a wool dress on someone all the time. So I totally get it. Yeah, it's something that, as I said, it can be adjusted. It just stick with the weight.
Yeah. Do you have any other pieces handy that you'd like to share with us?
So this one is another one, as I said, I had picked, this is probably one of the more traditional looking ones. So this is a yellow sweater. It's looking green in my camera right now because the light is betraying me. But this is inspired by those sweaters at Nonia, the cabled sweaters, the fisherman knit sweaters, we call them. So one of the things that I did differently is the sleeves are not cabled. They're just a nice stockinette to try and lighten it up. Because again, cables are heavy. You're using about, I'd say, 1 1/3 the yarn that you would versus if you just done it plain stockinette. Like you're using a lot more yarn on cable, so it's heavy. So if I wanted to make sure it's still light for the kid to be able to play in it, to move in it. So that was why I chose to go with the stockinette there. But yeah, it's
What's that design called?
this one.
Yes.
I called it Dory.
Dory.
So a dory is a little yellow fishing boat. Well, it doesn't have to be yellow, but they're most often yellow so you can see them.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
Yeah, not the fish, but the boat. Yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure. The other one it's featured on the cover is this one. And of course, we're in iceberg season now, but this is called the Iceberg Sweater. So the photo on the cover, that was taken down at Topsail Beach. So that's about 15 minutes away from my house. Everyone's within 15 minutes of the ocean, typically, especially where I live. But that was, we took it down on the beach there. And in the background, now on the cover, you can't quite see it, but there's a little island off the coast called Bell Island. And that's in the background of the picture there, because that's Conception Harbor, I think is the name, or Conception Bay, maybe. My geography is failing me now. But yeah, so that's one of the other ones there. This one I can't get Philip out of. I've put him in this a couple of times to get a few pictures, and then he's like, well, no, that's my sweater now. Like, what are you doing? No, I'm not taking this off now. So then I'm like, please, no ketchup. Like, that's all I'm asking. No ketchup.
I love the little diamonds in the yoke, and the patterning too is really great for a little person because it's proportionate, right?
Yes. So, and the way that these are done, so there are, let me pull it up here just to kind of illustrate my point a little bit better. Where are we? Okay, Iceberg Sweater. So they're all essentially the same design for the different sizes, but you're not using all 4 charts. It's just the bigger sizes are going to use the bigger charts to expand it a little bit. So from 0 to 10, you're going to get a similar looking sweater.
Very nice. To size 10?
To age 10.
Age 10. Okay.
So the way that the sizing in the book works is the garments are sized 0 to 10 years, except for the snowsuit, because I can't imagine a 10-year-old wearing a snowsuit, the little bunting suit, and the accessories go up to adult sizes. Yeah, so we did. These are a traditional pattern, a Newfoundland bubble mitten. So I made these ones that's Knit Picks yarn, and it's Richard DeVries yarn underneath it. So he is known for his speckle yarns down here. He came in here through Cast On Cast Off, which is one of our local yarn stores here, and like it's here to stay. That's all I'll say. We love his yarn down here. Actually, he came to visit one year a little while ago, and it was the best. But it was so just looking at like different. It looks like sea glass, right? Like that was kind of my idea of using that color. But again, 2 solid colors will look just as fun. Just bring it contrasting. But they're available from little baby to adult.
Does the baby have a thumb too?
They're optional. So you don't have to for like the smallest ones. Well, I mean, I'm not in the mood to try and force a newborn's thumb into a mitten. Like that's not my idea of a good time. If you want to do it, by all means. Mm-hmm. But from my experience, by the time they're about a year old, they want to use their hands. So yeah,
so you gotta have mittens. Yeah, thumbs. And that's really good. And then having that double layer, that's got to be really nice and warm too for little ones.
So for these ones, actually, there is no double layer. I'll turn it inside out because it's mosaic knitting.
Oh, wow. You used mosaic. Okay.
So you're slipping stitches to kind of make this little window. It's a magical type of pattern. Now, on traditional patterns, you'll see the purl bumps. Mm-hmm. I opted to not do that. I do it in a different way. So that's how I've kind of changed this one.
I
And then
love that. So
also,
a new slant on the bubble mitten.
but yeah, they're one of my favorite patterns to use. I like that pattern a lot for things. I did a shawl um, in partnership with Malabrigo a while back using this pattern, and it was just a lot of fun to do that. Yeah, yeah. And then if we want to talk about warm mittens, though, and again, these are 0 to adult. These are staples.
The
These
thrummed.
are thrummed mittens. So for those who are unfamiliar what a thrum mitten is, I like to call them hand ovens because once your hands goes in there, you're sweating, right? Like you're like, oh my God, I gotta take this mitten off my hand. It's too warm. But basically you're using unspun fiber inside and it's just creating all these little puffs. And it's just so warm and so nice and cozy, especially for their little hands. So again, now these ones I mean, I wouldn't put a thumb on it for a newborn, but they are so toasty and so cozy for them. So you know they're not getting cold. And eventually, like, and not to be gross about it, but like your hands will sweat in them. But with the sweat and the heat, this all felts up then on the inside, and that's what creates a bit of a lining for you. So brush it out as you need to go. But those, I was like, I have to put these in here. You have to put thumb mittens in there. And I've made so many pairs over the years, and like with all different colors and stuff. I've done like fleece artist is the fiber that I like to use. Like they have a nice merino spun or spinning fiber, and you can get them in all kinds of variegated colors and stuff. So like if you put like I've had them done where it's like a neutral color mitten and then like all these vibrant colors and they just change and move and stuff. It's so much fun. But in the book, what I've done is I've included instructions on how to do the thrum, because you can just tear off a piece of fiber and put it in. But I find when that happens, it sticks to each other and unevenly. This way, it creates a bit of a bubble, and then it evens out a little bit on the mitten. So it just keeps it a little bit better. So I've included that in the book because it's just, again, it's just how I prefer to do it. But whatever way works, thrum mittens for all because they're my favorite.
Katie, do you have any tips for us on washing or taking care of your mittens?
Yep. I would honestly, if I hand wash, or I don't hand wash everything. I have a nice pair of like color work mittens I did years ago in 100% wool. I hand wash those because they're my mittens and I have control over it. If Philip had these mittens say on his hands and he needed them the next day for daycare, I made these in a superwash yarn. I throw them in the washer. I lay them on top of the dryer to dry, but they get pitched in the washer, to be quite honest. The only thing is for keeping mittens and things like this clean, if you can spot clean it, that's going to be the best thing first. Like try and avoid throwing it in the washing machine or having to wash it all together.
Yeah.
But not to, I would, especially for kids, like super wash is just so much easier. If you're
Yeah.
someone who loves the process of hand washing, by all means, eat your heart out with the 100% wool. You know what I mean? Like go for it. But superwash is a lifesaver for parents and who like to knit.
Yeah. And I think there are so many superwash, beautiful wools out there that that's not a hard thing to find. And the other thing that I like to hear you say is, spot cleaning, because I think sometimes we throw things in the washing machine too much, too often, when in
Yeah.
fact we could just, brush them off or. Mhm.
Yeah, and like you don't need to, like I find with wool, like I mean, with Philip, I don't put this on, like for example, I don't put a sweater on him with like nothing underneath. Like usually has a t-shirt on or something underneath. You know what I mean? Like it's just because it's meant to be more of an outer layer to me.
Mhm.
That unless he gets something on it, I don't really need to do a full wash on that garment, right? So it's no different than like a pair of jeans or something like that. As you say, like you ruin your clothes by washing it too much. Mom always said that to me. She's like, you shouldn't wash them too much, you're gonna ruin your clothes, right? That was all she always said that to us. We're like, what do you mean? You got to pitch it all in the washer, right? Being a 17-year-old stubborn person, teenager. But as we got older, that's what we do now. Like a lot of stuff we like knit or otherwise, we'll either spot clean it or if we do wash it, we'll hang it to dry. So even if you have a superwash yarn, I would always say like don't put it in the dryer. Like the dryer is its enemy. I would just leave it flat to dry somewhere. And that's like if you have to put it in the washer, just leave it flat to dry.
Mhm.
Katie, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about salt box. I was, looking at those slipper socks, and I was wondering if they were knit flat.
Yes, so these are a little bit different. So forgive me because the photos in the book are actually taken on top of Signal Hill. So there is bits of we'll say fiber in the fibers right now, still left over from when I took the photos because they're never coming out now. But yes, so the way that this one works is you actually knit this part of the slipper flat, and then you join the knitting around here, and then you pick up and knit upwards like that, and you fold your cuff over. So they're a nice little slipper, inspired by the hunter sock. Like everyone in this province has at least 4 pairs of hunter socks in their drawer, because that's the only thing that'll go down the winter boot. Everyone buys the winter boots about 2 sizes too big because you got to fit the hunter sock in it. But yeah, so it's inspired by that. So that's why, the stripes and whatnot are there. But that's how we designed that one, or how I designed that one there, was to be knit flat first. And then that also kind of gives you a bit of leeway to try and, I guess, it gives you a bit more flexibility with the length from the heel to your instep, if that makes sense. So you can kind of think about that a little bit more rather than trying to figure it out with a heel, because you're doing that on a turn versus just doing it flat. So.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Great.
What sizes did you have available in that one, Katie?
Right up to adult. Everyone gonna have a pair of slippers now for Christmas.
The whole family.
Well, that's the idea, because like my mommy and me things are everywhere, or like daddy and me or whatnot. Like there's all kinds of matching things everywhere, and I was like, well, we can do it this way too, right? So it was like, especially for the accessories, it was not too challenging to do it the whole way up. I wish I could have done it with the sweaters. It's just that would have been, I think at that point we would be looking at another year to get the book out, because realistically then you need to do different samples, because grading from 0 to 10 is a large enough stretch, let alone having to try and grade it up all the way to adult sizes. And of course I'd want to be size inclusive with it, so then you're looking at potentially like 20 sizes of or more of knitwear and stuff. So that would have been a lot more involved that way. Maybe next time, but for now we just stuck to as I said, the garments are for kiddies, but everything else I was like, let's go for adults, because everyone loves a from mitten, everyone loves a slipper. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. And I know you're going to be getting requests next for the adult version of that little yoke sweater.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it can be done. And I'd love to be able to do it, but it's one of my things. I'm like, should I have done that? But as I said, it would have been another at least a year on top of everything with trying to do it, because I often too, like for me in the design process, like I can't write the pattern until I've knit the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I knit it first and I figure it out as I'm knitting it, and then I write the pattern afterwards. Whereas some people can conceptualize the pattern and then farm out the knitting to someone else to make sure it works, and then they can finish it off. I can't do that. I'm not there yet. Or I mean, maybe I don't have to get there, but it's just the difference in process. But for me, it's I would want to be able to knit those samples myself, and sweater knitting is timely versus little knitting.
I'm with you too. I think part of the design process comes as you're working it through, as you're knitting it.
Yes, and I mean, I think I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the blanket. Yeah. So I had a different plan for this blanket altogether. And when I was knitting it, I was like, that's not going to work. It doesn't look right. So back to the drawing board. So this is a little blanket here. It's like inspired by a Guernsey sweater with a different pattern bands.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I had a completely different plan for it. And it was only in the knitting that I was like, okay, no, like this, I gotta fix this. This is, I need to evaluate what I want to do with it. So that's kind of how I figure it out, or how my brain wants to figure it out.
That little blanket's called the Islander.
Islander, yeah. So Guernsey's a little island. We're a little island. Well, not really little, but we're an island So kind of paying homage to that there. Yeah. And this one here again, this is I would say is the like the crib, or no, I can't remember what way I have it organized, but this is the smallest size. I have one that's one size up from this, and then one that's a throw size. So with the stitch counts and stuff for that. So if you wanted to make one for your living room or whatnot, you know what I mean, you can do it that way. I love this size of a blanket for car seats. That was one of the other ones. I had knit the bounce blanket by Tin Can Knits for him when he was super little. I only just took that out of the car because he was using it, right? It's perfect, perfect size. So that's kind of what this sizing was meant for. But of course, people sometimes want a bigger blanket for a crib or like a toddler bed as they grow a bit older. Or some people just want a bigger blanket in general. So again, keeping it inclusive.
Yeah.
We're trying.
I love little blankets like that too. I just think they're such practical gifts for moms. And you know, you can throw it down on the floor to put the baby on for a minute or two, or wrap up and be able to cuddle in a rocking chair. We've got a request for a few more designs if you have them, Katie.
Oh my goodness, I have all of them.
Okay. We have a peek at Polaris.
Oh yes. So again, this one is available to adults. I have the yellow one here.
Oh, pretty. Isn't yellow beautiful this year? We're seeing so much this year and last year in yellow.
So yeah, so a little Latvian braid here with a snowflake, like a very classic snowflake design. So this is something that you see a lot on mittens. So I talked about Nonia. One of the types of mittens that they had was a colorwork mitten with that classic snowflake on it, and they were again double knit, so you're gonna be nice and toasty in it. So that's where it kind of came from. But then of course done on a hat, and then with little bits on top to add a bit of interest there.
Do you see the Latvian braid quite a bit too in Newfoundland design?
No, that yeah, no. I've knit a couple pairs of mitts where that was on the cuff, and I just loved it. So I wanted to put it in somewhere just to add a bit of extra, you know,
Color. Yeah. And
we'll say like just to make it extra fancy.
Mhm.
But I did. This was the first one that I did, and now just to compare. So this is in a Sweet Georgia. We talked about trying to select yarns and stuff like that, and how do we substitute and all that type of thing. So this is a Sweet Georgia,
Okay.
right? This is a Wisconsin C somewhere along the way. I can't remember the exact name on it. And this is Cascade.
Ah,
So it works, right? Like you can use a Cascade. You can use a Lions brand if you want. Lions brand I tend to like a lot for. I use Lions brand for the slippers actually because I wanted to have a bit more strength to it than a pure wool. But yeah, now this was this was a little bit of a. I had done an extra line down here on this one first. This is the first one I had done, but I changed it after. The same idea, right? But it's still a functional, nice looking hat, and it works.
yes. In a beautiful Peruvian wool. Cascade 220?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cascade is my go-to yarn. If I am like, what am I going to make this in? I don't know. It's like I always default back to Cascade, to be quite
Yeah.
honest.
Great color range, and it's available almost everywhere.
Exactly. And in terms of 100% wool, it's a really good price point for it. I find it is. Especially, it's not too rustic. It is woolly, but it's not, you're not finding bits of sheep in it. That's like saying you're not finding bits of barn in it anymore.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for something a little bit more than that, but that's where I would always recommend someone starting when they're wanting to try new wool or like a real wool for the first time. But as I said, that's, in terms of the two, one is a little bit more tonal, but in terms of the hat, they're both pretty hats and the color work and all of it. So yeah.
Here's our next one. We'd like to see Cloudberry and then Pixie if you have it.
I have both. So this is Cloudberry. So this is this is the itty bitty hat. Nice little cables in it. And of course I used a faux fur pom pom because I love them. I have a rainbow one in my cupboard there, and I'm just like, I need to make that with like a blue yarn or something. But this is inspired by our they can be called a cloudberry, partridge berry, bake apple, or not partridge berry, sorry, bake apple is the other name of it. Basically, they're little berries and they grow down in the bogs. So they're annoying to actually harvest. And when you get jam made out of it, it costs a lot of money to buy the jam, but it's very tasty. But that's but it's a staple again in like our food and stuff like that. But it's known as bake apple, cloudberry, that type of, is all the same berry, right?
Is it on the ground, sort of like a blueberry?
It's like a raspberry. It almost looks like a raspberry with like the different bubbles and stuff, like that
Yeah.
bubbly texture, like raspberry, blackberry type of looking thing, but it's a little bit more tart than a blackberry. Yeah.
Nice.
In September, like end of August, early September, it's blueberry season here. And I'm going to tell you, a Newfoundland blueberry is a different berry. I buy blueberries all the time at the grocery store because toddlers are obsessed with berries. Like that's just their life. They just need to have berries all the time. And they are not the same as a Newfoundland berry. A Newfoundland blueberry is like this purpley tart thing. It's delicious. We'll have to arrange something because I think we're planning to chat again later, which we'll talk about after. But like if you can get your hands on some Newfoundland berries, they are excellent. It's a wild blueberry, right? So, and everyone just goes out and picks them and just loves it and then stores them in their freezer and puts them in their oatmeal and bakes things with them all winter long. Like, so we have blueberries all the time because everyone just freezes them to eat them. They're delicious.
Lovely.
It's hard work because it's back-breaking work to do it, but oh my God, like when you can get an actual wild berry and then you make it into like a loaf or something, oh my God, there's nothing like it. And these ones I find they're super small and super tart, so like they work in it, you know what I mean? Like, oh, anyways, sorry, berries everywhere.
I can see a cookbook coming, Katie.
Right? Just a child with blueberries smeared all over their face. It's basically going to be the cover. This is all you need in your life now.
Yeah. Pixie, let's move on. Pixie.
Right. So this one was inspired by something that I had when I was a baby. So again, going back to Nonia, they used to make, or I think they still do, but they used to have the kitten hats, and they were made with Angora, and they had a little strap, and they were super sweet. And every baby who was wearing it, they just looked like little angels with a little halo over them. They're so sweet. And of course, I had one when I was a baby, because every female child in this province probably had one when they were a baby. And I wanted to do something in the same vein. Didn't want to completely copy what they do, obviously, because we want to do something separate. But this is another type of hat that we do see, and it's called like the little pixie style hat. So it's like a bonnet style hat with a little peak on the back. So this is actually knit flat and then seamed on the back.
Ah.
And then you just decrease to the point that it becomes like a little point, and you do a cast off. Basically, you just loop it through and pull it, and you have a point.
And then a little seam down the back.
And then a seam down the back. Exactly. Yeah. So it was super, like, it's a very quick little knit, which is nice. Now, this one is not available up to age 10 because, again, I don't see 10-year-olds wearing this. That would be one of the things that I said earlier about like knitting for kids. Like, don't make a 10-year-old a pixie hat unless they ask for it. Like, this one, what I did though was I included a little I-cord to tie.
Oh.
This can be left off. So for safety reasons, you don't always want to have a tie on a hat. Because if they're out playing with friends and stuff like that, the danger is if they get something caught, they could be stuck in, not good things can happen. But for the average, just going back and forth to school, going to the car, going to groceries, what have you, it's lovely. It keeps the hat on their head. They're not going to pull it off, especially because babies hate hats for some reason. They want to be warm, but they hate hats. So that's just one way to keep it on there. The way that I did this, and I explained it, obviously it's in the pattern, but basically you just start with an I-cord, then you work across the nape of the neck and wedge the line off, and then finish it.
What yarn did you use in that hat, Katie?
This again is Julie Aslin for DK, the Leaves You DK, and I used the marsh mohair from Lichen and Lace and held it together. Because again, it was going back to that Angora hat that I had as a kid. I don't have Angora yarn. It's hard to find Angora yarn, but there's mohair everywhere. So I've worked with mohair again. That's really popular right now. If you decide that you want to use a different type of yarn, if you decide that you want to opt out of the mohair, all you would do is just use you can use a worsted weight yarn with the same yardage, and then that comes together and makes about the same hat for you. So again, if you want to go to a Cascade, by all means.
Excellent. All right. Cynthia's just sent me a note saying, lastly, Boreal, and then we've seen them all.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, we have.
Wow.
Okay. So this is, again, there's bits of wood on this, but this is the little jacket. So again, I have toggle buttons on this one for ease because they are much easier to operate than flat buttons. Comes with a hood, and it starts with the hood. You just work flat and seam it up after. And very easy construction to do this. Very like a raglan increase for your
Top
sleeves,
down.
straight body, top down, and then you pick up for the button band and the band for the hood. And that is done in a broken seed stitch type of texture. Let's see if we can get the camera to cooperate.
Ah, yes.
So very just something textury to kind of give it a bit of interest.
And that's on the bands and the edges.
Yeah, exactly. And on the little sleeve cuffs too.
Mm.
And then finish with a mock I-cord. So you just do like a couple of purl stitches or a couple of purl rows, let it curl, and then because you want it to be stretchy, you don't want their hands to not be able to get through it or anything.
Yeah.
But yes, that's kind of where this one came from. And the idea of this is, again, like, especially here, we don't have super cold temperatures until about end of January, February. So between January 1st and April 30th, we had 3 days above 10 degrees. And 2 of those days were in January. So like we had a rough spring. So I'll just say that. But our temperatures are more mild. So a lot of times, like, we don't need to be wearing super heavy coats. We don't need to be wearing big parkas and stuff like that to go outside. Oftentimes, especially in the fall, a sweater like this is fine, right? I have a knit in a heavier yarn. This is a Cascade Eco. Again, back to my favorite, good old reliable Cascade. I made this one, which is the 18-month. I believe I made this with one skein of the Cascade Eco.
Yes, they have the big skeins. The put up is quite a bit larger.
I have one in yellow here because I was making something else in the yellow. But yeah, big bulky. Like it's probably a little bit lighter than a bulky. I would say maybe a chunky weight yarn. But again, it's 4-course yarn, and it works. It's easy to clean, and again, there's not too much bulk to it. So for car seats, it's perfect. Falling on them, let's go.
Do kids love wearing the hood?
Philip likes his hood. So, but it's again, you can opt to not put the hood there. You can just start at the collar if you wanted to. I like the hood because again, in the wind and stuff like that, like there's no point in wearing a jacket here without a hood. I'll just we just don't have that type of weather, right? It's to buy a jacket without a hood is like, okay, so you're going to wear that 3 days out of the year while you're wearing for the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's
very windy, and then for people who don't like the closeness of a hat, a hood's a really nice option.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, again, if you're out and around on a November day, you probably don't need, like here, you don't need a really heavy wool hat or anything on like that. Like, so the hood might just be sufficient, right? Or just if you're running back and forth to a grocery store or something like that. So that's why a lot of these with the hoods, I just put them in because, as I said, there's not much point in having a jacket without one.
Yeah. Katie, this has been wonderful. We've had such a great review of your book and been able to see so many designs and hear all the inside stories about what went into making them. Thank you. I'm going to turn back to Cynthia now because I know she's got a few things she'd like to share with us.
Yeah, Katie, well, first of all, I echo Barb in saying thank you. I love hearing all the advice that you've given and your suggestions for yarn and the, sizing up. That's all really incredible. This is kind of like I don't know, it feels like an epic project, right? It must have taken you a significant amount of time. And you're working with Boulder Books in
Yep.
Newfoundland. They're the publisher of your book, and they gave us a really nice option to give to our viewers and our friends. They're going to provide a 10% off promo code, and we're going to put that into the show notes down below. So underneath the video screen that you're watching, there'll be a little description panel, and we'll put the promo code in there for you, as well as a link directly to the book. And we're going to suggest to you, friends, that you purchase the book directly from Boulder Books. They have a great shipping rate and they'll ship all over North America. Because if you do that, Katie will sign it as well. And it's always nice. I don't know about you guys, but I love to have, that signature in the front of the book. It's almost like being there. So Katie will put a little bit of inked Newfoundland in the front cover of the book for you. And then we have some more exciting news. We're going to do a knit along with Katie's book. Barb and I it's going to take us probably all summer to decide which pattern to start with. But in September, we're going to do a knit along. We're going to invite you to join us. So get your copy of the book now and then peruse through it. Find the yarn you want to use. Maybe you want to, dig into your stash and use up a little bit of a hand-painted yarn. Maybe you want to order some Cascade Eco. Maybe you want to check out, your local fiber fair and see what's kind of cool there. And in September, we're going to get together. Katie's going to come to our knit along and talk to you about the patterns. Maybe you'll have some questions like I did. Are these socks really knit flat or are they in the round? You could ask Katie, do you prefer double pointed needles or are you a magic looper? There's all kinds of great conversations we can have then. The dates for our knit along are going to be September 9th. And then we're going to meet up again 3 weeks later on September 30th for a show and tell. We're going to start it at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That'll be 2:30 in Newfoundland. And we'll have all the details and registration available to you on our website. Again, links down in the show notes below. So make sure to open up that screen or send an email to info@rivercityyarns.com if you have any questions about any of that.
Mhm.
And with that, I think, oh man, it's time for lunch. Oh, Barb,
I'm
yeah.
just gonna add, I know that when we had the shop, people would come in and say, "Oh, like I don't knit baby, I don't do baby," and I have two things I want to say about that. The first thing is, if you make a baby thing, a baby will come in your life. It's true. It's happened to me many, many, many times. And the other thing that I want to say about this is, I currently don't have any little ones in my circle. However, Cynthia and I have a charity here in the Edmonton area that we love to knit for. It's called Basically Babies. And they put together a bassinet for a baby from newborn all the way up to 1 year in entire outfits. And so I plan on making several of these items. I'd like to have the little layette, the little blanket. I love that little hat, the little sweater. So that's what I'm doing. And I encourage you to join us to knit along and to donate to an organization like Basically Babies.
That's lovely, Barb. Thank you. It's always nice to be able to again use up some stash. And we were talking about this before too. Sometimes when we're knitting for charity, we might think, oh well, like Katie mentioned, it should be machine washable. But should I use that hand painted yarn for that? What do you
Yes,
think?
you should. Yes, use it up. It's beautiful, but it's probably been sitting in your stash for many years. And so this is the opportunity to make something adorable and make something cute.
Agreed. Agreed.
No,
I think
that's the other thing about becoming a mom is you just are weepy when you hear things like this. And I'm like, no, I need to make them all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a mom, don't you appreciate something handmade, Katie? Isn't that
Oh
just
yeah.
a natural nurturing instinct?
Yes, honestly, it's one of the reasons that I did this actually, and we didn't really get into that, but I am, when you talk about like love languages, if you ever heard of that term before, I'm like, actions, like, doing things for people. So the way I show love for Philip is I'm going to make him a sweater today. Like that's just where I go. So when I get things like that and I know how much work it goes into those types of things, like it's like, oh my God, like they thought of me, they thought of the baby, they thought of what I might like it's just, it's more than just, you know, a mindless thing that was done. Like it was very much, it was very intentional. And
Mhm.
that's what knitting is, and crafting in general is. Like I had received some quilted gifts, I had received knitted gifts, and it was all like is extra special. Like all that is put away for if we ever have a second kid, or even if not, it stays in the memory box, right? Like it's not going away. So
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Barb. Thank you, Katie, for spending time with us today. And we want to do a little shout out as well to Shirley Scott and Christine Legros, who are the other two Newfoundland designers that Barb and we just love. So we
Mm,
will put a link into the show notes below as well. If you wanted to add on to your order for Katie's book, which again is
yes.
called Knits for Little Ones, you might want to add on some of the saltwater series that Christine and Shirley have done. Oh, I'm gonna
I have
spotlight
them all.
Katie.
Katie, look at this. Yes, so if you're feeling that you need some big person love in your life, and I know Shirley and Christine do little things too, but that sock book, for example, has all sizes in it. And these are a great add-on to through Boulder Books, who happens yet to publish all of these titles.
Well, actually, I will admit these were gifted to me because my mother-in-law is the best. So, so these are my Christmas gifts for the last 4 years, or however many years they've been coming.
Wow.
But they are well loved. Honestly, I'm going to tell you now, my book wouldn't be here if not for Shirley and Christine, and especially Shirley because she's the one who messaged me to be like, people are asking for children's stuff. You should do that. I'm like, okay, why not? So it's like they are excellent, and if anyone's looking for like solid knitting books, by all means, like it's really well done. Oh,
Thank you, Katie. Thank you today for all of your inspiration and your ideas, and good luck on your book. Cynthia and I love it. Big thumbs up here from us.
I'm so
So
glad. If anyone, honestly, like if anyone's has any questions, if anyone wants to reach out to me, find me. There's an email in the book, knitsforlittleones@gmail.com. Like so that's for any support that you need for the book. But I'm on social media as well. Like I'm here. That's what I want to do, and I'm here to help as well. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, or if you need any guidance through the way. Yeah.
great. Well,
Yeah.
this isn't goodbye. This is see you again on September the 9th for our knit along.
Yes, and I'm going to set my computer up in a better spot because apparently I have no sunlight. So, lessons learned. That's it.
That's all right. That's all right. We
Looks
really
great.
appreciate. We know that there is a large time difference between even between us and you, but particularly for those of our viewers who are on the West Coast, there's a big time difference. So we try to pull that knit along time into a convenient time for most people, and so we really appreciate you coming to us, Katie, and taking time out of your day. You know that you're a busy person. You got a full-time job. You got a 3-year-old. You got a fiance. All of those people in your life need looking after, and so we really appreciate you taking this time for us and the time for the knit along. So, best of luck. We're gonna go and peruse the book and and find something fun to knit. And we know the knit along will just be the start of a knitting adventure, because once you see what everybody else is doing, you're going to want to do that too, right?
Oh, that's how we all learn, don't you know? Your
That's
pleasure.
right. All right. Thanks, Katie. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll talk again soon.
Bye.